Hey everybody, Emma Ansah here. Thank you so much for tuning into ADNC. I am here with my special guest, Kevin Morrison, who is coming to us all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. Kevin is a Black American who made that transition to Kenya. So I was really excited to talk to him to just understand what brought you there, what was the inspiration to pick Kenya, and we'll just get into the conversation. So, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me. I hope all is well over there in Kenya.
Yes, all is very well here. And thank you for having me. And I'm excited as a long time fan of ADNC. It's definitely the highlight of my podcast career so far to be here with you, Emma.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you very much. So, let's get into this conversation. Tell me everything. First of all, tell me where in the United States were you living, born and raised? And then what made you transition over to Kenya?
Sure, for sure. I was born and raised in a small town in Connecticut called Waterbury, but always knew that at some point I would be spreading my wings. Where and when was the big question from childhood. But I am here now, having spread my wings across the continent of Africa and starting west with Nigeria, Ghana, and Burkina Faso, and then making my way south to South Africa, to Botswana, to Eswatini, and then coming east to Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania. And of those 9 countries, I decided to make Kenya my primary base, still reaching out to various countries, primarily South Africa, during the last 14 years here on the continent of Africa. So that journey has taken me to experiences that, as a child, I never, or even a young adult, I never thought would happen. Always had the desire, and we'll get into that, the details where the desire was implanted in me, but didn't have the vision as a young adult to come to where I am at this point.
So you said you mentioned a few countries that you've been to on the continent, but you settled with Kenya. So what was it about Kenya that made you say, this is where I want to put up roots?
Well, in my opinion, at the time when I made the decision, Kenya offered me, and I had narrowed it down to 2 countries, South Africa and Kenya. And Kenya offered me more, or offered our organization more opportunities when it came to business as opposed to South Africa. So I started this journey by going on trade missions sponsored by the state of Pennsylvania that led into then me traveling on my own for business opportunities. Ultimately, business opportunities were the reason that brought me here, but my overall life goal was to come here from a cultural standpoint. So I was able to fulfill both goals in a relatively short period of time because I basically made it a focus to come to Africa and to pretty much leave the shackles of America, whether it comes to working for somebody, and then venturing out on my own and releasing those shackles or getting rid of those allowed me to start the journey, and I've been on it ever since.
So you mentioned shackles, and I was watching one of your podcasts, and the line that really landed on me was when you said it was life, or it was a matter of life or death. So tying that into what you said just now about leaving America and letting go of the shackles, what was it about America that made you feel like, okay, if I don't leave here, it's a matter of life or death?
Well, I mean, the statistics regarding mortality of Black Americans, Black American men, speak for itself. And, I always was the type of individual that accepted the highest challenge uh, in front of me and understood that that was my nature. But when you combine the need to excel, the need to face challenges on top of the discrimination, on top of the uh, lack of opportunity, on top of the financial constraints of the United States, on top of all the other factors, being a person that accepts challenges, but then having additional challenges thrown on you without your control was the reason why I knew it was a life or death situation. Um, the amount of hypertension that occurs in the states, the inability to lack access healthcare, even though quote unquote it's the best, were part of the challenges. So I said to myself, if there's a way where I can experience a better lifestyle, uh, being able to be anonymous, and when I say anonymous, on the continent, I'm anonymous unless I speak. I blend in with various individuals, various cultures in whatever country I've been to. And to me, that was a blessing. So I knew by relocating to Africa, relocating to Kenya or any other countries that I've visited, that I would extend my life, minimum 10 years, if not longer.
And have you noticed a difference? Like since you've been living in Kenya versus when you were living in the United States, have you noticed a difference in just your overall health and well-being? I know you mentioned blending in, and I always say this, moreover, is to people who have not, or I should say Black people who have not gone to the continent, when you land there, you can just let go of all of those things that we experience in North America, racial profiling, driving while Black, walking while Black, shopping while Black, all of the things. And like you mentioned, the list of all of the things you mentioned, have you noticed a difference since you've been living in Kenya versus
Yes.
the United States?
And you make a very good point, Emma, because a lot of people interpret culture shock as a negative thing. And the culture shock that I had here was the total opposite of that. You can call it reverse culture shock, whatever. It was a positive culture shock. To, just to give you an example, the first time I was pulled over by the police here, in several other countries, I had the white knuckle reaction on the steering wheel because I was driving. And ultimately, driving in a foreign country requires an adjustment, which you don't automatically make. You can make a wrong turn. You can misinterpret a traffic sign.
The steering wheel is on the right-hand side. All of those things. Yes.
Exactly. So, in that scenario, the typical reaction for me was, okay, this isn't going to go well. And then having that experience be the total opposite, to the point where, at one time I ended up befriending a cop. We would go out and have lunch and have a beer together later on in the evening. That's totally different than something I would ever experience in the States. So those type of reverse culture shocks were the first indication that I needed to make the transition out of the United States. That's just the first, not the only, of course.
And that's a big one because we have to talk to our Black youth and Black men and women to arm them with what happens if you should get pulled over, in the United States or Canada. So it's actually a very good example of the glaring difference when you're on the continent versus when you're in North America. So my other question to you is, going back to the life and death, have you noticed a difference in your health overall, your health and well-being since being on the continent?
Oh, for sure. And let's point out one of the obvious things. The consumption of processed foods is greatly reduced here. I'm old enough to have lived in a time where cooking was the norm and eating out was the exception. As you know, in North America, that paradigm has been shifted.
It's the opposite. Yes.
Yeah. Eating processed foods is more the norm than someone having the time or even taking the time or having the desire to want to cook and prepare a meal for themselves or even their family. So to re-enter that type of culture was a reason why I knew I would live longer.